Hello everyone, I am Robert Kelty from the International Baccalaureate, and I am accompanied by Watson Whitford and Kevin Belin from Navajo Preparatory School. Gentlemen, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Yat e shikero do shidene Watson Whitford and she tapahanishle chipwa kri bashis chin bit atni dashache chipwa kri dashanele tansiki wow wapanatag sigasun asani watitiku tinya tepugop sapnita tapunan. Hello everybody, my name is Watson Whitford and I come from the Chippewa Cree tribe and the Dene Navajo tribe in the Four Corners area. And I just introduced myself in my Dene language and the Chippewa Cree language.
Mr. Belin Jadahadet itot sapos Irish Cheshike, Turichin, the national clog a basis chain, kind of Sanya Chado, Cheshadasanella. I had out the national about out Baal.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start with the journey, right? Because life is often a story about a journey in terms of a search for meaning, a connection, culture, language, all of that. Your journey to Navajo Preparatory School. How did that happen?
Well, I started my education, my high school education at Rocky Boy High School, which is in Montana, and that's where my family is, and that's where I've been living for the past 15 years. And, you know, I wanted more of a challenge in my education. And so I saw Navajo Preparatory School was a challenging school that a lot of people went to, a lot of Navajo people went to. And so I'm both from the Navajo tribe, the Four Corners area, New Mexico, Arizona, and then also the Cree tribe in Montana. So, you know, I wanted to have a more challenging education, something that that will help me in my future, to have more opportunities. And so, you know, that's where I wanted to go. And so I signed all the papers myself. I did all of that, and all I did was have my parents signed the papers, and you know, I was able to attend Navajo Preparatory School, went through the whole process, and you know, now that I made it to Navajo Prep, I am more challenged in my education. I have more opportunities for a good future for myself in college and in a future job. You know, I want to become a naturopathic healer, to use these plant medicines to help people heal. And so, you know, I'm seeing all these opportunities come into place for myself at Navajo Prep, and this has been so helpful. And just, you know, it was mostly trying to find my way and how can I do better for my future. And I think Navajo Prep was one of my pathways, and that's how I was led to Navajo Prep.
And so, Kevin, you've been a part of Navajo Prep for a long time.
Yes.
And you are a leader of the Dene Bazad, the Navajo Language Center, an extension of the school. And there was a quote from one of my elders from Loop, Arizona, Irene Sosi, and she said, "Language is life. Like water, like food, language is life." What does that mean to you?
So for us, when at the school, our priority and strategic plan, our priority number one is language and culture. You have to understand the language before you can live the culture. If you don't understand the language, it's going to be hard to understand concepts such as hojo, which literally can be translated to beauty, which is often is. But when you understand the language and you hear the songs and prayers, you understand that living in hojo, living in balance, extends beyond just myself, but kinship with earth and sky. And so when you learn the language, it opens up opportunities and expands your thinking to not just yourself, not just your immediate family, not just your community, but also globally. Where do we all fit in with that, using that language? And so our language is our life breath, even when we speak. The way our tongue and the way in our ceremonial stories, the way language was created, it was built in the worlds below and brought out to this it was created to be a language of healing, is what it is. And so the way we say prayer, and that means our words have become reality. So anything we say, whether good or bad, manifests into reality.
And as a student, what does that mean to you?
So the language has been around me since I was born. My dad spoke the Cree language to me when I was born, and my mom would throw in Navajo language here and there. And so even my elders, they use the language all the time. They're the main ones that use our language. And it's been around me all my lifetime, so it's a part of who I am, and it's a part of my development as I'm growing up to become somebody in this world, to become somebody successful. And I'm going to need it for the future generations that are going to come after too. This is how we live, and it's really important for me to use this language because I wouldn't be who I am without it. I wouldn't be Diné, Navajo, or Chippewa Cree without my language. It's really important to me. It's who I am. And, you know, for these future generations to have this identity of whatever indigenous tribes they may be, they're gonna need that language, because without the language, it's gonna be hard to practice the culture, to understand the stories that are being told, to understand the songs that are being sang. And it's really important. And my dad actually has a language revitalization program for the Cree tribe because we have a low amount of speakers. And so, you know, we need to get back on that and try to start speaking our languages, because without it, we're not going to be here as Indigenous people.
Yeah. And so I use that word elder. Mm-hmm. And that word is not often used across different contexts around the United States and around the world globally, right? But is often used in many tribes. So when I use that word elder, what does that mean to you both? And what does it mean in terms of your connection to learning?
Well, elder to me means somebody who's highly respected in our community, somebody who holds a lot of knowledge, somebody you can go to when you need to learn something. And our elders, they're very important to us. And like I've said before, our elders, you know, when we lose one, it's like a library burning down with all that knowledge that they have. Mm. And it's our elders are really important to us. They shape the young lives in the community. You know, I've been, and I continue to be shaped by these elders in my community. But there's also a limitation to the word elder. You know, it doesn't bring in that kinship. So for us as Indigenous people to overcome that limitation, we bring in the words shimasane, shiche, which means my grandma, my grandpa, and then in Cree, nimosum, nukum, my grandpa and my grandma. And to bring in those words of kinship, it means more to an elder. And then there's that reciprocal relationship between the elders and the young people. The elders give you this information, this knowledge, these songs, teachings. Then we give something back to them. We help them with our young age to maybe chop wood for them, for their homes to keep warm, to cook them something, you know, and just to give back to them. And so we help them ease into that old age so that they could go into it, and we try to take care of them as much as we can because we love them and we care for them so much because of all that knowledge that they carry with them. So, yeah.
Kevin?
So with elders, we use that term, you know, it's real generic and like Watson says, limiting. But we also see elders in nature and in the sky and the universe. The rivers around here, what was their names? Because we're on Anishinaabe land here in Chicago. There's 3 bands. What were the names of Lake Michigan? What were the names of these areas and rivers that were around here? Because for most Indigenous peoples will consider those elements their grandparents, their elders too. The trees, and it may sound, you know, it may sound foreign to be able to learn from a tree, but I know we had a little discussion earlier. You like to climb boulders and whatnot. Yeah. And climbing through the boulders and up the boulders and wherever, you learn lessons, like you said. You learn how to plan out your trip. You understand dangers. You understand all of these things that's needed before you can't just go up to it. There's a level of respect. And so as you climb that mountain, you climb that high area, and when you come to the top of accomplishment, you look back where the path you traveled and where you're at, and you look around. That there is an elder too, because it taught you a lesson, taught you to value life. And so we see elders, we see these elements as our grandparents. There's terms of endearment. A grandparent or a parent, an elder or an uncle, an aunt will come to a child and say, "Come here, that term of endearment is not translatable. It's such a powerful word of love that you can't use that term with, like, hamburger. You can't say "Ashanat hamburger." It doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's just not. You can't even conceive something like that. But to use that term, and these elements say those things to us.
And so listening to you both, right, it's part of the reason why I have so much respect for Navajo Prep, right, because it is truly a beacon of light in Native American education. And it's trying to redefine what historically has been a very dark history around the boarding school experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I think about all the educators that are going to be listening to this and all these folks that want to be allies for Native American communities, this metaphor of living between two worlds often comes up. And it sounds like you all are fusing those worlds, but when you hear that metaphor, what does that mean to you both?
Thank you for that question. And this is a really important question too, because as Indigenous people, we need these allies to support us. The main thing is supporting us in our identity, in who we are, but also through education, maybe even governmental funding. It's really important for us to have that allyship and to understand that. And to be an ally, you have to be respectful too towards that culture and the way of life that they may be living, and not to overstep boundaries or anything like that. Going into that too, us as Indigenous people today, we live in two different worlds. This more modern Western world, but also our cultural identity, our Indigenous identity, and who we are, where we come from. So, I've talked to elders about this. I've heard different perspectives, and it's being grounded in knowing where you come from, your identity, these songs, teachings, language. I keep repeating myself because those are like the main things that we use. And that's where we need to know where we came from, because without that, we won't be able to be successful in where we go. We won't know who we are. And then with that, there's identity issues. And then being successful in this more modern way of life, we need to understand that we need this too. If we don't have that, then we won't get too far into the world. And we need to try to find ways to interlock those two and to make them into one, to live in this world. And I think this generation that I'm a part of is finding those ways and trying to understand that. It's really hard to understand that because I also come from two different tribes. So there's another two worlds that I have to balance. Right. And just trying to understand how I can balance that, try to find my own journey. And it's good, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way of life, but it's difficult too. It's challenging to find, how can I balance this? How can I go to a ceremony and then the next day go to my classes? It's an interesting way of life, and I hope other people understand that we're trying to go through that, and then maybe through that they can be our allies and understand and help support us maybe in this modern way of life, and help us understand how to live in that.
Well said. And Kevin, as a former student at Navajo Prep, and now a leader in the field, what does that mean to you?
So Navajo Prep really has helped me to become the leader that I am. And part of it was just helping with these remedial skills, really, and then helping to provide opportunities to learn. Because how are you going to be a leader if you're not given those opportunities? And if the opportunity is presented to you, do you have the courage? Do you have all these IB learner profile to be a thinker? Do you possess these skills, these attributes to go and pursue those opportunities. And in our songs and prayers, we talk about this embedded within our home ceremony, that the doorway that we've walked through, those are opportunities for us. Are you ready to take those opportunities? Are you brave? Do you have the necessary skills to be successful when that opportunity is presented to you? And so Naval Prep has done that for me. Naval Prep has also done that for me as a leader in the Navajo language and culture at our school and our community. And we're starting to slowly expand that as well, too.
Yeah. And so with that comes our final words, right? What message do you have for this international community that's really leaning in to this Festival of Hope? What message do you both have for them? And Watson, if we could start with you.
Okay. So I think one thing, and it's not just for Indigenous people, it's for all younger people today across the world. Us as young people, we're the hope, we're the embodiment of that hope for the people that came before us, for our parents, for our grandparents, and all of our ancestors. We're that hope to continue on to live this beautiful way of life, to continue on these teachings, these traditions that have been passed on before us, to continue to have that in our future and to pass that on to after us, to pass that on to the generations that will come after us, children, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, however far it goes. And, we want that to continue. And, those prayers that my ancestors said, I'm that living prayer, that living hope. And, it's really important for us to continue that. And I just want all the young people out there to, to listen that they're that hope to continue on, to know that they can do this. It's possible for them to go out into the world and to do this for themselves, but for their community and even for the world.
So, Watson, I just have to say, you said something I've never heard in my life, a living prayer. Like, how powerful is that? Kevin, final word.
So with that, when we think about hope, I know a lot of times as immature young, individuals, when it was difficult to find that hope. But understand, we tell our students that when we see that first light in the morning time, when we've been through all of the darkness, but there's also the stories and teachings of the stars, and that little bit of light that's up there, that's traveling, so many millions of miles. Those stories, the constellations tell us the teachings of living a good life, even in darkness, and that even in darkness, our grandparents are still with us, and that hope is just a few hours away, and that whatever we're hoping for, all the things that we've gone through, our grandparents, our parents, our teachers have prayed for us. Remember, prayer for us is words. And in the classroom, when a student comes in that's having a hard time, have a good day, how are you doing? Those simple words of encouragement, that's prayer for us. And so having hope is the final step of this whole process. Like Watson said, we're an embodiment of our grandparents and our ancestors' prayers, but also those that have made IB a reality too. And we just met with the director general, and so we stand on their shoulders as well. And those that created our school 30 years ago with the help of the Navajo Nation Council, their prayers 30 years ago has now come to where we have 260 students. And at that time, it was such a small number that it was just getting by, but now we're expanding our campus to a worldwide campus now. And so that hope that was ignited like a fire is slowly growing, and it's ever building and developing. So.
Well, gentlemen, you both give me sincere hope. I thank you so much for your time, for what you're doing out there in the world. Yeah.